Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. I have a very, very exciting guest for you today. Welcome, Robert Patton.
Thanks so much for having me, Jane.
So, Robert's an acclaimed author. He's host of the Agency Blueprint podcast, and he's an agency growth expert who helps his clients grow solid, sustainable businesses, grow to 6 and 7 and even 8 figures, and exit. And one of the main problems for many agencies today is how to stand out and prevent their services from being commoditized and price driven, because that's a race to the bottom, as we all know. So, a
Mhm.
major focus of our conversation today is going to be differentiation and how agencies can grow by becoming more authentic. Such an interesting topic, and I can't wait to get into it with you, Robert.
Likewise.
Okay, but before we start, let's just talk about you personally, your history. How come you are where you are today? Where did that all come from?
Well, a bit of a meandering stories, I think, for many people. I would say, I guess I would have to go back to kind of really younger years. Really, I'm a very analytical mind, very data oriented. I've always loved numbers. I mean, since the age of 12 years old, I was preparing U.S. tax returns and doing bookkeeping. My dad had an accounting firm, so I've been in the accounting world for forever with that kind of analytical mind. I decided to actually do something completely polar opposite to who I was born as, and decided to pursue a fine art degree and went to school for commercial photography. And after college, or university, as you guys call it in the UK, I had a photography business, grew that to be quite successful, recognized that that wasn't really what I was meant to do, but I've always absolutely loved the arts and absolutely just love the creative mind. I'm married to a fine artist as well. And after having shut my photography business down, doing a kind of year walkabout, my husband calls it my eat, pray, love year. And I traveled around the world, came back and had spent all my money and had to find a job quickly, and ended up finding a job at an agency. And it was the perfect combination between the creative world for me, as well as the analytical mind, the linear mind that I was born with. And it's been agency life ever since.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're a bit of a Galileo figure in a way. You're a Renaissance man, right?
I mean, I don't know that I would go quite that far, but that's a very nice way of putting it, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting though, because I think received wisdom is that agencies have to be creative. Creativity is obviously a huge differentiator, particularly with advertising, brand marketing. That's very, very important, isn't it? And obviously, we're going to get onto that. But also, a lot of marketing is very data driven. And without the data, there is really no metrics. And so, without metrics, you can't measure anything, can you? So, I think to me, it sounds like your skill set and your passions and your natural abilities marry together really nicely for the role that you've got.
I would say so. I mean, to me, everything breaks down to a number. Everything should be measurable to a degree. And how exactly do you measure success both on the client side as well as on the agency side? I find comfort in numbers, right? And if we're making decisions, and where a lot of agencies get stuck is we make decisions based on gut, especially for agencies that have had years and years and years of experience. They have the kind of know-how to go in a certain direction, but if it's not data-based, you can make the wrong decision even with 30 years, 40 years of experience. And so everything I think should be based in data somehow.
Yeah, and that is very, very important, because I think the higher up you get in the agency world, and I was very high in the agency world, as you know, we sold our business to the US Communications Group into public. So I was one of their managing directors. And believe me, at that level, it's all about the data, it's all about the numbers. It's what they care about. Because at the end of
Mhm.
the day, it's a business, isn't it? We've all got to make money. And let's not forget about that. It's not a hobby. It isn't fine art. And it's a very competitive and sometimes very cutthroat world. So actually, data is also a tool. And when you are commercially successful and you are profitable, then that gives you the edge, really, doesn't it? Because then you are able to reinvest in your growth, reinvest in the best people, and essentially have a better business. So I'm totally with you on that.
I also 100% agree, but I also kind of want to double tap on the fact that it isn't an art. And I think that loads of agency owners would fight you on that, but I 100% agree that you
Mm.
need to be doing this in the guides of the business outcome, both for you as well as for the client. And
Mm.
you're not doing this for art's sake; you're doing it for a business outcome. And I recognize that a lot of creatives kind of get stuck in that paradigm of, I love art, I'm a creative, but this is for a business outcome, and I think that's a really important call out.
Well, yes, exactly, and I suppose it there's always gonna be, to a certain extent, a bit of tension in agencies, really, because, I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it, by people who essentially they have the business head on, and then obviously the creatives. I certainly know when I was in agencies, the creators, what they wanted to do, their motivation was not necessarily, "I want to earn the highest salary and get those juicy, bonuses and profit share and all the." They didn't really care about that a lot of the time. What they really wanted to do was do great work, and
Mhm.
that is the main driver and the motivator. So, essentially, I guess people who are more business-minded, they appreciate and they love the great work, but at the same time, it has to be there for a reason, doesn't it?
100%, and you need both, right, in order
Yeah.
to have a profitable, growing business.
Definitely. Okay, well, I've got plenty of questions I'm gonna ask you today, Robert, so if it's okay, we'll get straight into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about, how to prevent your services being commoditized and just compared on price, because the price matching is a totally soul-destroying and profit-destroying situation for agencies to be in, but it's very common, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I would say it's one of the biggest holdbacks for a lot of agencies. And I kind of want to take a bit of a step back here. And I recognize that this is a US metric, but there's 350,000 agencies, and kind of large air quotes on agencies because a lot of them are freelancers. But because of that, it's created loads of issues for lead gen, for sales. It ends up putting us in a place of discounts. It becomes hard for the client to differentiate you from the other agencies out there because so many people sound exactly the same and are positioned exactly the same.
Definitely, definitely. So obviously, differentiation is absolutely key, isn't it?
If you're not differentiated, you will be in that race to the bottom that you mentioned at the very beginning of always competing on price. You will be
Exactly.
stuck in that commoditized place 100%.
Yeah, and the irony is that a lot of agencies are engaged in the process of differentiating for their clients, positioning their clients, but they don't necessarily do it for themselves, do they? Why is that?
I mean, there's so many reasons why I would say that that happens, but the predominant reason why is that here's kind of what happens at the very start, I would say. And this has happened many times in conversations around differentiation with clients. Um, is that a lot of agencies will look first place is look at the competition to determine their positioning.
Yeah,
And I find it very ironic that when you go into a branding process for your clients, one of the first things you're doing stakeholder interviews, you're then doing customer interviews or client interviews. Then you go to the competitive landscape to understand exactly how others are positioned so that you're not emulating them or even differentiating from them. But you start with what the business is all about, and you don't start there. And I was having a conversation with a client. It's been maybe about a year odd, and it was a Friday afternoon. We were talking about differentiation, and we were going to continue the conversation on Monday. And what he said was, "Is I'm going to take some time over the weekend, and I'm going to do some research around my competitors." I'm like, "No, don't yet. Like, you want to confirm the direction we head afterwards." But I
mm,
would challenge every single one of you listening right now: take your website copy, the headline, the subheadline, the position that you currently have. Take your top 10, 15 competitors, take their headline copy, and then I want you just to directly compare them to yours. I can
ah,
pretty much guarantee you that they sound the same without the branding. You take the logo away, it sounds exactly the same.
yes, you're so right. There's just a well, it's a sea of sameness, isn't it? That's the phrase, isn't it? Yeah.
100%.
Okay, yeah, and I certainly know look, it's tough, isn't it? It's not easy when essentially you are working for the same outcome, right? A lot of the time. So, a client might come to you and they have a requirement for a campaign, and they might know what that campaign is going to be, or at least they'll have quite a strong idea. And so essentially, if you're an agency and you're asked to pitch for a campaign and it's going to be here's the brief and all the rest of it, how can you really stand out in that situation?
Well, you're talking kind of in an RFP orientation. The first thing that I would even say is, why are you there to begin with, right? What is the reason why you're even involved in that conversation in the first place?
Absolutely.
Is it really a campaign you should be working on? Is it a core competency of yours? And if
Yeah,
so, once you have that understanding of why they've invited you to the table to begin with, it allows for you to understand what it is exactly that they're looking at from you.
yeah,
And it's also challenging, right, the client in a lot of instances. And they may be right with the direction that they're going, but understanding why and how they got to the direction that they want to head for that campaign in the first place. And a lot of us, what we want to know when we're hiring an expert, when we're hiring a specialist, is that they are going to take control of the situation and we are safe.
definitely.
And in order to be able to do that, you actually have to be able to show them that you are an advisor in the situation. If you actually relegate yourself to being the pair of hands and just doing the creative work for that campaign, you're never going to actually establish that advisor, that specialist, that expert position with them. So you need to first challenge the idea, the concept, the direction in the first place, and then kind of go out of the box a little bit in a lot of instances, right? If you kind of toe the line of a lot of what other agencies are going to do, you're going to look exactly the same as well.
Definitely, I totally agree, and a lot of that is it's about having confidence in your own thought leadership really, and really your history and your expertise, isn't it? Is it a confidence issue, do you think, in part?
I would a lot of sales is and positioning is in a sales conversation, and when you're presenting is 100% confidence because people are not going to have confidence in you if you don't first have confidence in yourself. A
Yep,
little bit of an embarrassing admission, I suppose. In like the first sales conversations, right? Career accountant, working as the head of finance for years. As started my own business, obviously I had to do some sales at some point, right? And I had to muster the confidence. Like I'm a generally fairly confident person to begin with, but a sales conversation, I wasn't a sales. I hadn't been trained in sales. That wasn't my job really, and I was getting into my first like bona fide. I'm the only salesperson on this call. I would stand in like Superman pose, giving my myself words of self affirmation of like, you've done this in your career, you've done this, you've accomplished this, to like allow for my confidence to be boosted a bit, and then going into that conversation because it's kind of that idea of how they say that dogs can smell fear. It's your prospects can smell when you don't feel the confident level and you're not sure in yourself of the direction that you're headed, and they won't
yeah.
trust you.
Yeah, and something I just want to touch on this because my nephews and nieces were brought up in the US. My sister used to say when they were at school, she used to say, "Oh, it drives me mad. They come home with all these tics and they've got all these spelling mistakes, and all they care about is putting them in front of the class and them doing a presentation." And she said, "I wasn't brought up like that. I was brought up to write proper essays. Nobody ever asked us to stand in front of the class and do a presentation." And when she started working in corporate America, which she did because she married an American guy, she said the same thing. She said, they're all like great salespeople. You put them in front of an audience and they'll put on the performance of their life. I'm just wondering, is it that we Brits are like too reticent and that you being from across the pond, let's just say, in the US, are you really brought up with that, if you like, primed for that kind of confident presentation style? Or is it
Um,
just a thin kind of veneer that you just have to keep working on?
I mean, I do think that in the US, I mean, I'm married to a Brit as well, so I understand the nuance and was living in London fairly recently. So I understand the like distinction between British culture and American culture, but I don't know that I would say that entirely because I had the exact opposite effect as a child being forced to
Yeah.
speak in front of the class. It actually made me less likely to want to do that and not want to perform because I didn't enjoy it. So I was put on the spot. It is something that is held in high esteem, extroversion, confidence,
Mm.
machismo, if you will, in like the
Mm.
masculine sense of it as well. It's definitely a very American thing. And I don't know that I would call British culture and people to be I don't remember the exact word that you used, but I don't know that I would say that they don't have confidence. They do have confidence, but it's in a respectful undertone kind of way. And you have to pay attention more when it comes to someone that is British speaking because they're going to be a lot more reserved.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's true, and then maybe there will be kind of nuances, maybe like a little bit of subtlety. There are certain things maybe that we like to use a little bit more, like irony and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, just an interesting a little diversion there. Okay, so what is at the core of a differentiation to you, Robert?
So I was actually talking fairly recently and speaking to a group of agencies at a conference about this, and 80% of the room, when I asked them this, was actually not clear on the core of their differentiator or a differentiator in the first place. What I
Mm,
would say what I would say for agency world, what needs to be at the core of your differentiator is what is the actual safety that you're providing for your prospective client, right? What exactly is going to allow for them to have a reduced perceived risk in engaging with you in the first place? How
mm,
exactly are you positioning yourselves that allows for you to create alignment with your why and their why. That what
mm,
is the motivation with you? Like if you were to not get paid another dime in the world, but you would still do this work, why is that? How did you end up here in the first place? Like when talking about my story earlier on in this podcast, right, is that
yeah,
I grew up with a camera in my hand, but a very analytical person. I went to pursued a fine art degree in commercial photography, absolutely love creative people, and then found what was the perfect crossover between who I
mm,
am, what I love, and that's how I ended up where I am, right? And it's the same thing for
mm,
you. You've gone through this meandering life and ended up exactly where you are of the thousands and thousands and thousands of different potential industries and services that you could potentially be offering and doing and specializations you could have done as a career, you ended up
mm,
here. And if you were to talk about that from an agency side, have them understand you, understand your background, understand what it is that you're wanting to have impact in the world. And if there's a crossover between you and what they want, it creates a safety for them. I would say
yeah.
doing that exploration is really important.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, an alignment of values in a way.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I love that. Really good. Okay, so how does being specialist impact differentiation? Is it important for agencies to specialize or should they not?
So, I mean, I don't wanna say that they should or shouldn't, right? I think
Mm,
I personally believe that it is not my job to tell someone what they should want out of their life and out of their business. My job is to make what they want out of their life and their business become a reality. It
mm,
will make things loads easier, though, being specialized. So, I mean, you look at the pentagrams of the world, for example, right?
mm,
They are known for being a world-class design shop, initially being incredibly specialized in the types of work that they were doing, have
yeah,
created notoriety, incredible reputation because of how they're set up, the way that they function, the partners managing their own teams, the way that the entire makeup of the organization functions. And
mm,
if you're able to actually distinguish yourself, it makes things easier from marketing to how you're positioned to the messaging that you're utilizing to how you acquire clients to how you position in a sales conversation to how you create comfort and safety. It has and impacts so many different components, even to operational efficiency. So yes, I think it's incredibly important, and it makes things a whole lot easier to allow for an agency to scale.
mm. So, an interesting thought that I had when you were talking about that is to do with operations and operational delivery, and how much of a differentiator is the operational delivery compared to call it the front end positioning, which is when you're going out there and selling to clients, which is the most important in your view?
Hmm. I can't say that I can choose between the 2. I think that they're both
Mm.
incredibly important. You can't have one without the other, right?
Yeah,
Because, I mean, you wanna have a profitable business, right? You need to be able to sell the revenue to be able to bring in the money in the first place, and then you need to have good operations for it to be profitable, and you're not having cost overruns. So, they kinda go very close in tandem.
they
Revenue
do.
doesn't solve all problems, right? But it also allows for you to have better outcome for the client. It allows for you to be able to serve them more when you understand the industry that you're serving and the work that you are doing, so you can be more of that advisor. You can help them avoid more of the speed bumps along the way, so they have a greater outcome and greater client retention. You're able to just you're able to operationally be better because the team actually understands it intrinsically. For examples, talking with the head of strategy at a agency client of mine, she's now working at a agency that specializes in the finance sector, and
Mm,
she really prolific career, one of the lead director strategists at Ogilvy for a number of years.
mm,
And she, when she started at this finance oriented agency, she said that she spent hundreds of hours needing to educate herself in the finance sector, this highly regulated
mm.
industry in the United States, right? Which obviously isn't incredibly efficient, but now she is because she's done that research and invested into herself and into that role to allow for her to be able to do that. But it's those types of things that allow for her to have more meaningful impact with the clients that they're working with because she understands it backwards and forwards.
Mm. So, would you say then that in terms of like an industry vertical, is that helpful for agencies to have? So, let's say financial services or energy, or, well, I mean, anything really. If they, I mean, our agency was media and television. So, we just worked for clients in television. And it was very successful because of that, because we didn't have to look anywhere else. It was a relatively small pond. It was difficult to break into, but the hard work had been done years before. So is that really the recipe or part of the recipe for success?
Yeah, I would say it's one of the ingredients. It also depends on the size too, right? I'm not gonna say like you're not gonna go to Shy a Day and say you need to be focused entirely on one industry, right? They're already at a substantial size. They're thousands of employees. It's already a
Yeah.
substantial agency, right? If you're doing 25, 30 million plus at this point, no, doing an industry specialization probably isn't a necessity. But
Yeah.
if you're a smaller agency, a couple of people, even sub $10 million, it will make your life a whole lot easier to be both ideally in a service specialty as well as a sector or industry specialty.
That's very interesting. So I was just thinking about another very successful agency that I worked for relatively briefly, but they were in automotive events, and what they specialized in was global car launches. They didn't do anything else really. I mean, they had a little flurry with Coca-Cola because they brought somebody in who had some history with them. But really they were just known for that, and they just had the best clients in the industry. They had BMW, Porsche, lots of the real premium brands, as well as the car rental companies like Europe Car and so on. And that was, just echoing really what you said. They specialized in events, event marketing, and that was what they did. And then they specialized in launches. So that was what they did. And then they specialized in really kind of premium car brands, and they were known for that. And again, that business was extremely successful, grew very fast, was sold for a lot of money. And actually, I'm still in touch with the founder who went off to live his dream life and owns a huge vineyard where he produces the most amazing wines in New Zealand, and that's what he did.
Hmm.
So, yeah, just to
You think
echo what you say.
and you think about that, right? How many other agencies in the world are going to be specialized in experiential marketing, but car launches and for luxury brands?
Mm,
How many other agencies are saying that? I doubt if any. And so it allows for you to charge a premium price, be able to get deeper
yeah,
with what it is that you're doing, have a
yeah,
core expertise that clients are willing to pay for.
yeah, yeah. Are there any particular, niches or sort of verticals that you see are really performing well right now, or not?
I will say that there's some that are not performing incredibly
Okay.
well. I don't know that I want to answer that question fully because I think that a lot of people will then just go after something that, oh, that's
Oh,
monetarily
yeah,
profitable, and then end up falling incredibly flat because they don't care about it and can never
yeah,
dedicate the time to be excited about it. And when you're not excited and passionate and having fun with it,
true.
you're not going to do great work. What I will say is that right now, what you want to be considering is the industry that you're going to be serving and that you're going after and targeting, are they going to be more relevant in 10 years? So probably looking at truckers, for example, right? Maybe not the right direction to go, or looking at even newspapers or publications, or printed publications, probably not the right place to go. It's a dying industry. Retail might be a bit of a problem. Even more e-commerce is the direction to go. There's also kind of like
Commercial real
some
estate.
some like economic factors that need to be considered
Mm,
with high interest rates right now. There's less available capital. So the technology sector has been a bit struggling. Financial sectors have been struggling a bit as of late. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't specialize in them. It just means that you have to know them really well and have a core expertise that allows for you to be able to do good work with them,
mm,
um, because there's less available work within those sectors at the moment.
mm. And you made a very interesting point there about passion and really about not just chasing the dollar. As well, because I always say that to my clients because they come to me and they say, I mean, I serve experts, so a lot of my clients, they'll be consultants, for example, B2B business owners, small business owners, and they'll come to me and they say, "I've got this really, great idea to launch this product, and then I've got another idea to launch this product, and which product is better?" And I'm like, "Which product do you feel most passionate about?" is the answer, because we can make anything work. We can inject growth into it. The whole issue is how you're going to feel about it when you wake up in 5 years' time and you think, I'm going to be spending another day working on this product. So, yeah, that's it. It's so important, isn't it?
It's incredibly important. I mean, do you really want to be living a life where you're spending your 40 hours a week or more focused on something that you actually don't enjoy? That doesn't sound like a life that I want to lead. And
No.
I mean, there's totally stealing from a client here, but I just think that this puts this is so incredibly well on how I feel about the thing that I get to do, and where I get to be able to help agency owners be able to have their dream life now. And it makes me feel incredibly fulfilled in what
Mm,
I get to do day to day. But the thing that I've used now with clients and going through a vision workshop with one of my one-on-one clients, at one point he said, "Oh, so what we're looking for really is the thing that's going to make my tummy smile." And what he meant by that was, like, the thing that gives, like, that butterfly feeling, that thing that, like, really energizes you, makes you really
mm,
incredibly excited, and if it doesn't give you that butterfly feeling anymore, or it's not something that actually starts off that way, then you're 100% going down the wrong path. And money is a great motivator. I'm not gonna say that it isn't, right? We need to have the roofs over our heads and be able to feed ourselves and all of that. It's something important, but it also isn't everything. And I know for me, having reached I don't really need any more money at this point, right? Like, I have all of my life needs covered. I live a phenomenal life, better than I ever thought I would 20 years ago, live the life that I get to lead now. But I still incredibly want to grow because I want to help more agencies now. It
mm.
isn't about the money. That isn't the motivator for me anymore. Money only takes you so far. I mean,
Yes.
I think there was a study done in the US. I want to say it was New York Times that published it a year or two ago, talking about the correlation between happiness and money and how much that actually provides for motivation and energy. And there's every single market in the world has a number of, if you make this much money, you're no longer motivated by it, period.
Mm.
And you're going to hit that number. And then what happens? You just don't
Yeah.
want to grow your business anymore?
And I see this. I've seen this quite a lot. I've seen people who, they've built a really successful business and then they just run out of steam. And it's like, well, look, really, it's not going to be that hard to sell this business because it's quite exciting and it's profitable. And it's like, I can't be bothered to do that. And you think, oh, what happened? And it's just that they've just lost the motivation.
100%. And I think that's disappointing for a lot of people, right? And
Yeah,
it's so hard to grow a successful business, right? It isn't
really
it
hard.
isn't
Yeah.
for the isn't for the weak-hearted, right? Like,
No.
a it's a lonely, anxiety-driving, risky place to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to dissuade anyone that's considering starting a business. If you want to, still do it.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do it, like, I want it to add to my life. If I'm gonna
Mhm.
take on the risk, I'm gonna take
Mhm.
on the pressure, I'm gonna take
Yeah.
on because you have both the active and passive thought. Like it's going to enter into my mind when I'm on a walk with my dog. It's going to enter into my mind when I'm on a Saturday sitting at the pool in the sun, right? Like it is going to have components that enters into your personal life, and it
Of
is going to be
course.
something that does that. I want it to be something I actually love and enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I also think it's very important to work with clients who you also love and enjoy. That really matters, doesn't it?
It 100% does, because
Yeah.
I'm sure we all have had clients that sucked the energy out of the room, where we got the email and like, this person again, right? I hope that that's not your life. The majority of it, we've all had those clients. And I would say if you do have them, replace them, get rid of them. But the first thing that I would say here is, the position that I would want you to think about when it comes to, you're now, and let's say that you're in this position, you're a specialized agency that has a core expertise, you do phenomenal work. The thing that I want you to think about here is the client needs you.
Mm.
Most agencies think that you need them more than they need you. And completely wrong. Most agencies start off back footed because of that.
Mm.
And once you know who you are serving, what it is that you're doing, you can start to look through the how they think, the demographic, psychographic information of who it is exactly that provides that ideal relationship for you, who that soulmate person is. So, like for example, let's say for me in this example, right, knowing a little bit about my scenario, I really love working with passionate creatives that want to grow their business, provide impact to both their teams, their lives, the design community, the agency community, that are open, vulnerable people. Like I talk about vulnerability in your business, how to not be money motivated in everything that you're doing, be passionate about what you're doing. And for those that do not resonate with that message, I don't judge you. I'm just not your guy. And that's
Mm.
totally okay. And
Yeah,
knowing the distinction of who you're meant to serve and who you're meant not to serve allows for you to be able to have fun again, right? If you The amount of energy depleting the wrong client can be is catastrophic in a lot of instances. And so kind of stop being that chameleon where you feel like you have to sell to everyone, because you don't and you shouldn't.
totally. I mean, I think it's like carrying a sort of bag of rocks on your back, right? If you've got the wrong client, if you've got somebody who is just draining and they don't appreciate you and they're always like chipping away at your confidence or, oh, it's absolute hell. And we do deserve more. And I think we have to draw a line in the sand, just like we do with our personal relationships. I mean, we wouldn't choose friends that were mean to us. Well, at least I wouldn't choose friends that
I
were
mean, I hope you wouldn't either, any listener.
yeah, and who criticized us the whole time, and so we really shouldn't put up with that. There are enough people in the world, enough clients who are really going to appreciate us and are gonna love what we do, and that is just the most fantastic relationship because we feel as though our talents are being recognized and celebrated, and we are making a difference. And I think that's the thing about agencies and agency owners and creatives and people who are providing services is that fundamentally we want to make a positive difference to others. And so it's very gratifying if we get appreciated for doing that. It's relatively simple in a way, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, I think that you called out something that's incredibly important too, right? Is that there are enough people, there are enough businesses out there. There's 8 billion people on the planet, millions and millions and millions of businesses. I mean, I want you to think about it this way, right? If you're considering a, a sector or industry focus, the service that you're offering, I want you just to look at how many businesses are within that sector. If you
Mm,
can just do 1% of that market, what size can your agency grow to? Is that going to surpass your goals? Probably many times over. There's plenty of people out there. You do not need to sell everyone. It you're Trust me, you will thank me and you'll thank yourself for it by not selling every single person and knowing who you want to work with and saying no to the people that you don't. And that's
mhm.
you're not meant for everybody. And I know that I'm not, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
But, it's also quite a scary thing, I think, for some people to say, "Okay, I'm gonna close the door on these people," and I know that a lot of people do struggle with that whole issue of, "I'm gonna niche down. I'm going to just appeal to this group of people. I'm gonna close the door to, people in a different industry, clients who are not they don't necessarily resonate with my values. Maybe I could get to like them if I just warmed up to them or they warmed up to me," and all of these things that we tell ourselves when really I think that probably comes from a place of fear. Would you agree?
100%. But I also want to even flip it on its head there for a moment. I want you to think about this way for a second, right? And most people think that you're have like this FOMO that you're going to be turning away opportunities. In fact, the opposite is true. I want you for a lot of businesses, right? And I want you to think about your business listener right now. It feels, and I don't want to discount the love that parents have for their children, but it does feel like a child, like an appendage to you, because it
Mm,
has been so incredibly fought for, the risk, the time, the
yeah.
fully consuming piece that it is of your life, at
Yes.
least at the early stages. For the person that you're selling to, in so many instances, especially if you're selling to the SMB market, right? You're going to be talking to a higher level, either owner, partner, executive within the organization. And if you were to, in your personal life, let's say that you need to have the brakes done on your car. Are
Mm.
you and you have two different options sitting side by side on the street of a shop that does computer repair, brakes, does, roofing, does this, does that, and then you've got the next place that does only exclusively German-made vehicles and the brakes for them, and it's the family vehicle that your children are gonna be driving in. Which place are you gonna go to?
That is actually hilarious. I must admit, I've never come across a shop that does tires and computer repairs and probably like a, takeaway kitchen where you can get like a really nice burger and
Yeah, they shouldn't exist if they do exist, and but agency world tries to do that, right? A
Yeah,
lot of agencies try to be that, and
yeah.
it doesn't work, and nobody believes that you can do all of that and do all of that well. So,
Well, that's absolutely amazing. So, Robert, what I'd like to talk about is you've got a special offer, a download, haven't you, that you've prepared for our audience. So, would you like to talk about that?
yeah, if you go to creativeagencysuccess.com/smart connector, there's three things that you can do on that page. I've put together on that page our capabilities deck guide. It walks you through how to create your agency pitch, but to do it in an authentic way that creates alignment between your prospective buyer and what your core differentiator and your reason for existence in the world is, to create alignment between the two, create more safety. If you're wanting to dive deeper into how you can go about growing your business, we've got a free copy of my international best-selling book, The Practical Agency, there for you to go ahead and download. And if you're currently in a place of struggle, wanting to figure out how you can go about growing your business and not sure which direction to go, I'm happy to have a chat with any listener of the Smart Connector and talk about what would be the top three things that you should be doing right now. And I'm sure that all the listeners here are one of the Smart Connector podcast, want to help more people, create more impact, and I want to be able to help you do that.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've so enjoyed our conversation together. Obviously, because of my background and my interests as well, it's been a particularly special episode. So thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed having you here as a guest.
Thank you for having me, Jane.